Well, hey, friends, this is Bruce Duty with Cross Country 3. Cross Country 3. Our focus is to help you to persevere in the faith, to protect your family, and to preserve those precious freedoms that you have. So every episode that we have will focus on at least one of those, if not all of those. And what a joy and privilege it is to do just that, hoping that you are blessed, encouraged, exhorted to live out the life that God called you to live where you live here in America. We know that in today's environment, it is imperative that we be strong in each of those categories, that our faith is in the Lord Jesus, not in ourselves, that we take care of the family that God has provided us with, and we appropriate that freedom that's so joyful for us to have in Christ, and then to live as men and women and boys and girls in God-blessed America. Well, with that in mind, today I've got my youngest son, Shane. Shane Duty is the leader of and president of Family Life Counseling Center here in Eagle, Idaho. Eagle is a part of the Treasure Valley where Boise, Idaho, the capital of Idaho, gets most of the attention. But Eagle is a great place to live, and Shane and his family live in Meridian, which is right next to Eagle. And this is his counseling office. That's Family Life Counseling Center. And I'm so glad to have Shane with me, and to know that Shane is living at God's best today as God grows him and his family. He has earned his degrees and credentials in counseling. He's a believer in the Lord. He loves America, is thankful to be brought up in America. And I believe that he's making a difference today. And I think he'll be making a difference in the future as well. And so I'm just going to ask Shane a few questions here and there, and see how Shane might be used by God to bless us today. First of all, Shane, just want to say thanks for joining Cross Country 3. And why don't you start just by introducing yourself and maybe some significant things about your family?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I certainly appreciate it. First and foremost, I am a husband and a father. My wife, Julia, and I live here in Northwest Meridian, and we have a daughter named Adeline. And those are by far the two most significant things about me, or the two of them, and the time that we get to share together. We've lived here in the Treasure Valley for almost 15 years now. Julia and I have been married for coming up on 13 years and have spent the majority of our time here in Boise, with the exception of a couple of years in Kansas City. For about 10 years now, almost a decade, I've been a practicing counselor here in the state of Idaho. Currently, I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and during that 10 years, I've done a little bit of everything within this realm, if you will. Started out providing substance abuse treatment over in Canyon County. And from there, spent a couple of years out in the prison system doing a lot of diagnostics and assessments. From there, I spent a couple of almost 5 or 6 years with the Department of Health and Welfare, where I really served in a more program and project management type of role in doing system implementation specifically with children's mental health in the state of Idaho. And then I spent a year or a little over a year overseeing partial hospitalization programs for adolescents here in Idaho. Locally, I oversaw a facility, and then oversaw some of the clinical operations for a number of facilities from Seattle over to Omaha.
That's a lot in your fairly young life. Is there one specific target of people, or maybe a group of people, that you like leading, counseling, helping, serving the most?
Sure. So that's a pretty broad population that I've had the privilege of serving over those 10 years. My favorite group to work with is working with couples and families, hence the name Family Life Counseling Center. It was pretty purposeful, and that's what I like doing. Have a number of couples that come through here, and then so seeing them on a kind of a more marriage basis, but then also seeing the whole family as well. And we'll have husband and wife and kids all come in here for family sessions as well. And that's who I like spending the majority of the time.
Well, and for those who are hearing, they would obviously be interested in that because families are going through very difficult times today. And certainly we, I hope, are smart enough to know that that's not new. It just seems to have intensified recently, and not just with inflation. And so families trying to make it financially, and not just with those things that are easily recognizable when we think about America and where she is heading, the church and where she is heading. But more detailed, I think that we are, I know I am, as a husband, a father, and a grandfather, I'm concerned about how our teenagers and our pre-adolescents are engaging socially. So are they communicating well with one another face to face? And are they able to be self-aware enough to know how they are being impacted and shaped by the culture in which they live? And so I would just bet that a lot of our listeners and viewers would be interested in your insight on what our young people are facing today.
Yeah, well, I think specifically for those that I see, and I would make the generalization across the population of our country and the world, is that those battles start internally within the home and work their way outside of the walls of our homes, family units. And that those most important relationships, but also the most impactful, whether it's in a positive way or a negative way, is going to be their relationship with mom and dad, and how that they are loved, how they are raised, and how the depth of the relationship is fostered between them and their parents. And then it's going to extend from there. We become more susceptible to whatever the extended world is going to throw at us when we don't have a founded and strong core inside of us. And that's certainly true for our teenagers. There are teenagers who are somewhat enthralled with social media and aspects from friends and things like that, but they are able to remain grounded because their family network at home is strong. And there are some who should, from the surface level, be able to battle against those things, but become very susceptible to what the world has to offer because their network at home is not as strong as it should be.
That's what a huge role that you and others like you play in the lives of men and women and boys and girls who are dealing with the issues of today. And it sounds like that what you are trying to do, and perhaps some of your colleagues are trying to do, is to help strengthen the person's identity. And I'm thinking about the word authenticity at the moment. I know you've used the word authentic, and so I'm going to reach over real quick and bring up this, one of your brochures that looks like this, and it says on there, authenticity over affliction. And so you also help people overcome affliction. And so I guess I'm making a transition here, or perhaps a transition. You can help me decipher that. And then, what do you mean by authenticity?
Sure. Yeah. So I would break that out into a couple of ways. And in general, I would say as a therapist, the lens at which I typically take to a therapeutic session, whether that's with an individual, a couple, or a family, is that of a cognitive behavioral type of approach. And to break that down into somewhat kind of oversimplified terms is you start off with, we all have these cognitions that we operate with. And we like to state those as I am statements. So I am loved, I am strong, I am unloved, I am weak. And those really impact the next kind of cog in the gears here, which would be our emotions. So when I feel loved, I typically am able to act with joy. I feel joy. When I'm loved by my spouse, I feel good. When I feel like, for whatever reason, I'm not being loved in that moment by my spouse, then the emotions, I begin to feel lower emotions. Those emotions really impact our behavior. So when I am feeling depressed, as I would say that is typical with males, when I feel depressed, that is oftentimes comes out in a behavior of frustration or anger. And then that behavior of being angry or being frustrated then really feeds into my environment. And my wife doesn't like it when I'm angry. And so she tells me her lack of appreciation for that. And then that again then reinforces those cognitions. And so we get this cycle of behavior and emotions that are ultimately influenced by our cognitions. And so to go back to that view of authenticity, we want to be able to settle in those both positive and negative cognitions that we have about ourselves, and really begin to be able to sit with them and be true with them, so that we can understand how they are impacting us. And so then you start to branch out into, are you providing a more secular type of counseling, or are you providing a more spiritual type of counseling in a Christian environment? And really that approach is true on both of those. When you're talking in a more secular sense, there is still a sense of worth that comes from being able to put your hand over your heart, be quiet for a second, and feel your heart beating. Well, Christian or non-Christian, we typically all have hearts, and they're typically beating, and there is a level of worth that comes with that beating. And so I can sit with that in the moment and think, okay, my heart is beating in this moment, and that speaks to a level of worth that I have as a human being. As if you are a Christian, if you are a believer, then you get to take that up a notch, even above that. And that, okay, I'm putting my hand over my heart, I'm feeling that beating. There's nothing that I can do to cause that heart to beat. So there is a purpose and a reason for that. And in a more humanistic view, there is something that I'm striving for to earn the worth of that life. In a Christian view, Judas did something. He not just did it, but became it. He became, I am, I am worthless almost, right? He lost his meaning and committed suicide. And because of the weight of that and the shaming of that and his lostness and separation from Christ, obviously. And Peter experiences the flip side of that coin, which is what we want to experience and what Jesus allowed him to experience on the beach, which is he tried to run away from his sin, but Jesus found him and made him guilty of his sin, which allowed him to then to feel it, deal with it, be questioned of his love, and then move on and then go do those great things. And that guilt allows us. So you think about the cross being up on and what is the name of
Calvary.
Calvary? Goodness. And guilt allows us to go up the hill to the foot of the cross and find redemption. Shame keeps us from even, we might be able to look up and see it, but we get in this just swallowed up and don't even get to the foot of the cross, where guilt allows us to get up there to where we can find redemption.
Yeah. That's terrific.
Some lack of identity and lack of being, having a confidence in myself, and it gave me something to learn how to do and to do fairly well. And so I would say those things.
Shane was a football player. He was very active in our church youth group, took mission trips, worked alongside our youth pastor, Mike Dunn, and other church leaders. They did a lot of hiking together, serving together, cleaning up together, things that good, solid church youth groups do. Shane right now is a deacon in a church here in Meridian or Eagle? Meridian. And he and Julia and Adeline are a part of that church family.